Mike Spade is a learning strategist focusing on bridging the gap between historical scholarship and immersive technology, and he is based in New York City. He showcased Du Bois Does Data, a reimagining of Du Bois pioneering data visualizations through augmented reality. His project examines relative economic parity of Black Americans and uses census data in Python to depict potential economic implications of parity, encouraging the audience to do so as Du Bois once suggested. Imagine what we might be if we grow to what we wish. Check out his work, links in the description box below.
All right, everyone. We're at the NYC Public Interest Technology pop-up here with Mike Spade.
What's going on, people?
Mike, tell us what's going on.
What's going on? Well, you guys have the pleasure of joining me at Du Bois Does Data. We're down here at the Oculus today as part of Open Data Week.
Tell us about your project. What are you sharing with us today?
Sure. Yeah, Brendan, so about 3 months ago, I saw this movie, Black News. It's an independent film, and it covers a journalist who's on a voyage, transatlantic voyage, on a hypothetical Marcus Garvey's Black Star Line, right? And she ends up staying in Shirley Graham Du Bois's suite, and one of the main characters of the film is W.E. Du Bois himself. And in the film, they talk about how he moved to Ghana and died while trying to complete the Encyclopedia of African and American and African Experience. And I just, honestly, I felt really disappointed in myself that I didn't know like as much about the people and their work. So I wanted to learn more. And as I started learning more, I started thinking about, okay, how can I share this with people? And so that started as like a data collection experience or data collection experiment with Jupyter Notebooks. And then as I got more and more just like immersed in the narrative, I thought about what are some other ways that I could tell that story.
I love playing in Python, but for our folks who may not know, what is a Jupyter Notebook?
Yeah, a Jupyter Notebook is it's an environment, right, where you can run Python code. You can run it section by section so that you can load up different data sets, different images, different libraries that you may need to call to help build out the experience. But what it does is allows people to engage with the data step by step, as opposed to engaging with them maybe all at once. You can see like where the data is actually pulled from, and it can build upon each other. So here in this one, you'll see that Du Bois looked at a couple different data points in Black society in 1900. He specifically was looking at metrics of occupation data. He was also looking at economic data, how much wealth people had, in addition to how many people were there and in what parts of the country, and then also what was the relative like literacy rates among these people. So here you'll see that we separate out like, oh, there's population percentage, there's education percentage, professional percentage, and then this economic parity here. And as you interact with the notebook, it's able to give you first the data in just like what you might see in like an Excel sheet, right? In like a spreadsheet format. But then you can actually use different libraries or different Python commands to manipulate that data visually, right? So here we can now look at that same data in a bar graph.
Mike, is this data from what Du Bois worked on, or is this something else?
Good question, right? So Du Bois' data stops in 1900, his data work. For me, I was curious, what happened in the 125 years since, right? So this picks up actually where he left off and then continues until 2025.
And then where are you sourcing this updated data?
Yeah, so a lot of it coming from census surveys or from publicly available journals. If you visit this online, I'll make sure that there's more data transparency and provenance included within these sheets.
Earlier when we were speaking, you mentioned how this was really just kind of the jumping off point for what the project expanded into.
Yeah. So my day job, I'm an educator, teaching and learning manager for an ed tech company. And so as much as we have a data science track where the students in that track would be familiar with Jupyter Notebooks, they'd be comfortable with opening up a notebook in Colab and getting into data. I know not everybody is comfortable with that. So I wanted to build something a little bit more accessible. So the first thing I made were these lesson plans, right? So people could actually come to the resource hub for Du Bois Does Data. In this resource hub, they could choose their level of engagement, whether they want to be a scholar, which is more made for people that are in college, university level, versus our people that are in K-12, high school level. They might want to lean towards more of the Explorer level. Once you choose your level of intensity, right? You can also choose which lesson you want to participate in. What's awesome about these lessons is that they're very interactive, so that you can scroll through. There's pieces for you to flip and reveal. There's timelines involved. You have pieces where you can, I believe I already got the micro credential here for flipping, right? So you can also unlock different micro credentials as you explore deeper or as you engage deeper with the lesson. So that was the first piece, was really just trying to think about, okay, what does a lesson plan look like? And then I got a little bit further into the artistic vision. The next question I was curious about was, could I create a VR experience? When I shared some of this initial work with the Du Bois Memorial Foundation, one of their comments to me was, well, how does a 10-year-old engage with this? And I immediately made me aware that a 10-year-old's not going to engage with that Jupyter Notebook.
Right.
10-year-old doesn't care to see the 600 lines of code that you have compiled, right? But what would be more interesting for them, if they can put on a headset and be dropped into an environment that like plays a song that they might know. Also, that they could look around and see in full color, oh wow, that's his wife. That's their house, that's their garden, right? This is where they're buried, right? These are some of the different books that she wrote while she was alive. And I think this makes it much more easy for people that aren't necessarily interested into the data piece, that aren't necessarily tied to the social piece, right? I think this is a little bit more easier for them to engage with.
It's amazing. It seems like you turned life experience into a data experience. And what does data mean to you as an educator?
It's our shield. It's our armor. I think data is one of the most empowering things that we have, like at our disposal. Our country was founded on the idea that an informed populace, right, is the best defense against tyranny. And I think that's still the case today, right? And so for us, I think if we can get this data out, and especially in ways that are digestible, right, then that gives us the best chance to actually have a conversation about, like, okay, well, what does this mean today? And how does this data, what story does this data tell about like where our community should go in the future, right? Because I think that's like what I'm curious about when I look at like wealth parity, or when I look at the educational attainment numbers. I'm curious, like, how do we change this, right? And I think we can only start talking about like what we do to make those improvements if we have a definitive baseline that we can agree upon of this is what we're stuck in now, right? And the only way we can do that is with data.
This project can go in so many different directions. It already has. What's next for you?
For me, first is there's just so much with Du Bois, right? So trying to get this to really to show more about what he contributed to society. So the first piece was he was such a prolific writer. So I was able to go through the public domain writings of his and assemble them into one website. So you have in this website over 200 iterations of the Crisis magazine that he published with the NAACP. You also have that study from the Philadelphia Negro, the Gifts of Black Folk, right? And in this, if you were curious about what he thought about the color line, what he thought about education, you can actually ask this RAG-based model for answers, and it'll populate those answers based in his writing first, and then give you citations at the end. So for me, it's about making these tools more robust, feeding them more data, as we've been talking about, making sure that data provenance is transparent so people can actually see where it does come from, right? And can I do this matching up, and can I verify this data on my own, right? And then I think, can we apply this to other figures? This pattern, right, of taking these different writings, ingesting them, putting them into a database, making that database able to be called upon in Gemini, and then giving people answers that are based in truth, right? Always starting with the text. I think we can do that for other people. And so I've done this for Ida B. Wells too, and I'm curious to see how we can keep honoring our cultural figures with data experiences like this.
How has both data, and I see how you've deployed AI as well into your process, how has it impacted your sense of the capabilities of an educator today?
I think there is so much potential for our educators today to create more interactive materials, right? To also think about what are the different formats for students to indulge in education, but what we need to do is make sure those same educators have the time to train on these tools, because as much as the capability is there, these people are at capacity already. Most of the educators I talk to are working more than 40, 50 hours a week just as a standard. So I think, like, yes, we need to find ways to get these tools into their hands. We also need to find ways to give them the time to do so. If you want to find out more about Du Bois Does Data, you can go to radicalimagination.xyz. We'll be launching our app soon at radicalimagination.xyz. Radical Imagination on Instagram, TikTok. And if you want to find me personally, I'm Mike Spade. Mr. Mike Spade on Instagram, Mike Spade on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you all. Thank you.